She cheated on me and laughed when I found out. Everyone thought I'd explode, break something, beg her to stay. But I didn't say a word. I just looked at her, smiled, and said, "Okay." And that silence, it scared her more than any scream could. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe, tap the like, and tell me in the comments what you would have done. Now let me take you back to where it started. It was a quiet Friday night, the kind that smells like rain and cheap wine. The house was still warm from dinner, candles burning low on the table. We had a few friends over earlier, laughter echoing in the kitchen, but now it was just me and her. Rachel. She was scrolling on her phone, smiling at something I couldn't see. I remember the way her thumb hovered, paused, then darted back. A small movement, but it hit me like a cold wind. I tried to ignore it. I poured us both another glass of wine, trying to hold on to normal. But when she glanced at her phone again, the reflection of her grin caught in the glass cabinet behind her. And I knew. You ever feel it? That shift. The instant you realize someone's already gone, even if they're sitting right in front of you? "Who's that?" I asked, voice steady. She looked up, half annoyed, like I'd interrupted a thought that mattered more than me. "No one," she said, shrugging. "But no one doesn't make you blush." The air between us thickened. The soft jazz playing in the background suddenly felt fake, like a soundtrack for a scene I didn't sign up for. I tried to meet her eyes, but she looked through me, like I was a placeholder for someone else. Later that night, after she fell asleep, I checked her phone. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. You can call it weak. You can call it desperate. But sometimes the truth demands to be found. And there it was. Messages, pictures, words that used to be ours, now thrown at someone else. I sat there in the dark, my heart pounding like a slow drum. Not angry, not yet, just empty. In the morning, she saw the phone in my hand. Her face changed, but not the way I expected. No guilt, no panic, just irritation. "So you went through my phone?" she said. "Yeah," I answered quietly, "because I already knew." She sighed, stood up, and poured herself coffee, like we were discussing groceries. Then she looked at me, right in the eyes, and said the line that burned itself into my mind forever. "Be a man and accept it. It happens." No apology, no remorse, just those words, sharp and cold. And I swear, I felt something inside me switch off. I didn't throw the cup. I didn't shout. I just nodded once, walked past her, and left the house. No plan, no destination, just silence, and a storm brewing somewhere behind my ribs. I remember standing outside, feeling the wind against my face, realizing how quiet the world gets when the noise inside you stops. And right there on that empty street, I made a promise. Not to get even, not to hurt her, but to never let anyone speak to me like that again. Because sometimes, being a man means knowing when to walk away. The first few days after I left Rachel were strangely quiet, like the world had turned the volume down just for me. I stayed at a small rented apartment on the edge of town, the kind of place where you can hear the pipes rattle at night and the traffic hum in the distance. I didn't bring much, just a suitcase, my laptop, and an old bottle of bourbon that had somehow survived every argument we ever had. I didn't call anyone. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't even check social media. I just needed the silence to wash away the noise of her voice saying, "Be a man and accept it." Those words repeated in my head over and over, like a record with a scratch that wouldn't let the music move on. I replayed the moment she said it. The lift of her eyebrow, the way she sipped her coffee like I was nothing but a bad mood she'd already moved past. I kept wondering when exactly she stopped seeing me as a man and started seeing me as a mistake. 3 nights later, a message appeared on my phone. It was from her best friend, Emily. We hadn't spoken in weeks. During all the years I'd known Rachel, Emily had always been around, bright, funny, the kind of person who noticed small things about you that others missed. She used to tease Rachel about taking me for granted. Once, during a party, I overheard her whisper to someone, "He's too good for her." Back then I thought it was just a joke. But now, reading her name on my screen, I wasn't so sure. The message was simple, I heard what happened. Are you okay? I didn't know what to say. The truth was I wasn't okay. I felt hollow, like my chest had been emptied out and left for the wind to fill. Still, I wrote back, "Yeah, I'm fine. Just trying to keep my head straight." She replied almost instantly, "That doesn't sound fine. Can we meet? You shouldn't be alone tonight." I stared at that message for a long time. Felt wrong somehow. She was Rachel's best friend. There were lines, rules, things you didn't cross no matter how hurt you were. But then again, Rachel had already burned every rule we had. She crossed a line and told me to accept it. So maybe I was just done following lines drawn by other people. We met at a small diner off the highway, the kind of place where the lights flicker and the coffee always tastes faintly like metal. She was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window, her hair pulled back, no makeup, wearing a gray sweater that looked too big for her. When she saw me, she smiled. Not that fake kind of smile people wear when they pity you, but something real, something soft. "You look tired," she said. "I could say the same," I answered. For a moment, we just looked at each other, the sound of the rain against the glass filling the silence. Then she said, "I can't believe she did that to you." I told her she was playing with fire. I didn't want to talk about Rachel, but somehow everything led back to her. We talked for hours about life, about choices, about the kind of people who pretend not to care when they've already destroyed something good. I told Emily things I hadn't told anyone. She listened, really listened, like every word mattered. At some point, she reached across the table and touched my hand. It wasn't planned. It wasn't flirtation. It was something deeper, something that said, "I see you." And in that moment, I realized how long it had been since anyone had seen me like that. With Rachel, I'd become invisible, a background character in my own story. But with Emily, I felt present again, real again. We stayed until the diner closed. When we stepped outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy and clean. She asked if I wanted to drive around for a while, just to clear my head. I said yes. We drove without a destination, the headlights cutting through the fog. She told me about her own heartbreaks, about how she'd always felt like the second choice in every relationship. We laughed about stupid things, about old memories that didn't hurt anymore. And somewhere between laughter and silence, something changed. When she turned to me, her eyes held that mix of warmth and curiosity that says, "You can let go now." I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't about revenge, not in that moment. It was about feeling alive again. It was about remembering that I still mattered, that I could still make someone's heart race. She didn't pull away. Instead, she kissed me back, slow and deliberate, like she'd been waiting for that moment too. We ended up at her place, a small apartment filled with books, plants, and the smell of vanilla candles. We sat on the couch, still wet from the rain, and just talked. Hours passed, but it felt like minutes. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel betrayal. I just felt something new, something dangerous, something real. When she leaned her head on my shoulder, everything that had been broken in me began to piece itself back together, one heartbeat at a time. When I left that night, I stood outside her door for a long moment, listening to the quiet. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like a victim. I didn't feel like someone who'd been told to be a man. I felt like a man who finally remembered who he was. I walked to my car, the city still asleep around me, and realized something. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about making someone suffer. It's about living in a way they never thought you could after they tried to break you. I drove off into the dark, not knowing what would come next, but certain of one thing. Rachel had told me to accept it, and I just had, only not in the way she ever imagined. The next morning, I woke up with the faint light of dawn bleeding through the curtains, my phone buzzing on the nightstand. For a second, I thought it was the alarm, but then I saw the name flashing across the screen. Rachel. I just stared at it. The same woman who had told me to be a man and accept it was now calling me like nothing had happened. I let it ring until it stopped. Then it started again. This time I picked up, not because I wanted to talk, but because I wanted to hear the tone of her voice. She sounded angry, impatient, almost offended that I hadn't answered sooner. "Where have you been?" she demanded. I almost laughed. "Does it matter?" I said quietly. There was a pause, a shift in her breathing, and then she snapped, "Don't play games with me, David. You're acting childish." Her words rolled off me like rain off a coat. "You told me to be a man, Rachel," I said. "I'm just doing that." She didn't like that answer. I could hear it in the way her voice tightened. "I didn't mean disappear," she said, as if she still had the right to define what my strength should look like. "I just meant." But she didn't finish the sentence. Maybe because for the first time, she realized she'd lost the control she used to have over me. After that call, I didn't hear from her for a couple of days. Instead, I focused on work, on routine, on breathing again without feeling the weight of her betrayal pressing against my chest. Emily checked in every now and then. Short messages, little things like, "Did you eat today?" Or, "Don't let her get to you." Each one felt like a small light in the dark. I didn't know what we were or what it meant, but I knew I wasn't alone anymore. Then came Friday. I was at my apartment, trying to fix a leaky faucet when someone knocked on the door. I wiped my hands, opened it, and there she was, Rachel, standing in the hallway with that same smirk she wore the day she told me to accept her cheating. But this time, the smirk didn't reach her eyes. "You're hard to find," she said, brushing past me like she still lived there. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "We need to talk." "About what?" I said. "About us." That word, us, sounded foreign, almost absurd. She looked around the apartment, frowning at the simplicity of it, like she expected to find some trace of misery she could feed off. "You look like hell," she said. I smiled. "You always did have a funny definition of hell." She sat on the couch, crossing her legs, pretending to be calm. "Look," she began. "I know I hurt you, but you can't just disappear. People are talking." I tilted my head. "People?" "Emily," she said without hesitation. "She's been asking about you. Constantly. It's weird." Her tone shifted, sharp with jealousy. "She's not who you think she is." I almost laughed at that. "You mean the woman who was honest with me when you weren't?" Rachel's expression faltered. "You're seeing her, aren't you?" she asked, her voice cracking slightly despite the icy tone she tried to maintain. I didn't answer right away. I wanted her to feel that silence, the same kind I had felt when she shrugged off my pain. "Does it bother you?" I asked finally. She stood up, her face flushed with anger. "Of course it does. She's my best friend." I met her eyes and said quietly, "And I was your boyfriend. But that didn't stop you, did it?" For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. She just stared at me, her hands trembling slightly. Then she tried to shift the blame like she always did. "It was a mistake," she said. "It didn't mean anything." I stepped closer, not menacingly, just enough so she could see that her words no longer had power over me. "It meant enough for you to throw everything away," I said. "But it's fine. You told me to be a man and accept it. So I did." I saw the realization flicker in her eyes, the moment she understood what I meant. "What did you do?" she whispered. I smiled faintly. "I accepted it." The color drained from her face. "You didn't?" she began, but couldn't finish. I didn't need to say anything. Silence can be crueler than confession. She took a shaky breath, her composure cracking like thin glass. "Emily wouldn't. She wouldn't do that to me," she said, almost pleading now. I shrugged. "You sure about that?" She turned away, pacing, muttering to herself, and for the first time, I saw her not as the woman who had broken me, but as someone small, desperate, suddenly aware that the rules she made didn't protect her anymore. She stormed out without another word, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. I stood there for a long time afterward, just listening to the quiet that followed. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It wasn't even revenge. It was peace. The kind of peace that comes when you finally stop letting someone else write your story. That night, Emily called. She asked if Rachel had come by. I told her yes, and she sighed. "I figured," she said. "She called me earlier, screaming." I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Better than I've been in a long time," I said. There was a pause, then a soft laugh. "Good," she whispered. "You deserve better." We didn't talk long after that, but the silence between us felt different, comfortable, like the kind that only exists between two people who've both survived something. Later, as I sat by the window, watching the city lights blur into streaks, I realized something else. Rachel had spent so long believing that being a man meant enduring humiliation, swallowing pride, and pretending nothing hurt. But being a man wasn't about silence or submission. It was about dignity, about knowing when to walk away and when to remind someone what real strength looks like. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the night settle around me. I didn't know if Rachel would come back again or what she would do next. But I knew this much. The man she once dismissed had finally stopped existing. The one who replaced him didn't need her forgiveness or her validation. He just needed the quiet, and the quiet had finally come. Days passed, and the echoes of that confrontation began to fade. Rachel didn't call again. Instead, the silence became its own kind of answer, one I had longed for without realizing it. Emily and I started seeing each other more often, not because we planned it, but because it felt natural. We would grab coffee after work, walk by the river at night, or sit in her apartment listening to old records. There was no pretense, no games, no guilt between us. Sometimes she'd catch me staring at her and smile like she knew what I was thinking but didn't need to hear it out loud. For the first time in a long time, life didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like recovery. Still, there were moments when the past tried to sneak back in, like a ghost that refused to stay buried. One night, Emily asked me if I regretted it. Not her, not us, just everything that had happened. I thought about it for a while before answering. "No," I said. "Pain has a way of burning away the parts of you that never mattered. I lost something, sure, but maybe I needed to lose it to find myself." She nodded, her eyes soft but knowing. "Rachel always thought she could get away with anything," she said. "She never believed anyone would walk away." I smiled faintly. "She was right about one thing," I said. "I did accept it, just not the way she wanted." A week later, Emily invited me to a small gathering at her friend's house. I almost said no. I wasn't ready to face people who might still see me as Rachel's ex, the guy who got cheated on. But Emily looked at me and said, "You're not him anymore." So I went. The house was filled with laughter, music, and the smell of barbecue. It was one of those evenings that feel like summer even if it isn't. People asked me how I'd been, and for once, I didn't have to fake my answers. I was honest. "Better," I said. "Just better." Somewhere in the middle of the night, as I was talking to one of Emily's friends, I felt a chill crawl down my spine. I turned, and there she was, Rachel, standing in the doorway like a storm that had found its way back. She hadn't been invited. That much was clear by the way everyone suddenly went quiet. Emily froze for a second, then stepped forward. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Rachel's eyes darted between us, sharp and trembling. "We need to talk," she said, but her voice wavered. Emily crossed her arms. "About what?" "About him," Rachel said, pointing at me like I was the problem she came to fix. I didn't move. I just looked at her, calm and steady, letting her unravel in front of everyone. "You think you can just take everything from me?" Rachel hissed. "My best friend. My life. Your best friend." Emily cut in. "You mean the one you used as an audience for your drama?" The tension in the room thickened. Rachel's face twisted, but behind the anger was something else, fear. She turned to me, her voice trembling now. "You did this to get back at me, didn't you? You wanted to hurt me." I took a deep breath, not to calm down, but to make sure every word I said landed where it needed to. "No, Rachel," I said quietly. "You hurt yourself. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences." She opened her mouth to speak but couldn't. Her confidence, the arrogance that once filled every room she entered, had vanished. She was just a person now, stripped of power, forced to face herself. Emily stepped closer to her, voice low but clear. You told him to be a man and accept it, she said. And he did. Maybe now it's your turn to be a woman and do the same. Rachel looked around the room, realizing that no one was on her side. Every face she turned to met her with silence. The same silence she once used to humiliate me now stood against her. Finally, she turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. The sound echoed for a long moment before fading. The room stayed quiet. Emily reached for my hand, squeezed it once, and smiled. "It's over," she whispered, and for the first time I believed it. Later that night, after everyone left, Emily and I sat on the porch, the air cool and still. The moon hung low, the world finally calm. "You know," she said softly, "I don't think she ever understood you." I nodded. She didn't want to. Understanding means seeing someone as human, not as something to control. Emily rested her head on my shoulder. "And now?" she asked. I thought about it, staring into the dark horizon. "Now I understand myself," I said. "And that's enough." Weeks passed, and Rachel became nothing more than a name I used to know. Sometimes people asked about her, curious about the gossip, but I never gave them what they wanted. There was no anger left, no bitterness, just acceptance, the real kind. Emily and I built something genuine out of the wreckage, not perfect, but honest. There were nights when we stayed up talking about everything we'd both been through, how easy it is to lose yourself in someone else's expectations. We promised not to let that happen again. Not with each other. Not with anyone. One evening, months later, I got a message from an unknown number. It was Rachel. Just one line. "I finally understand." I stared at it for a moment, then deleted it without replying. There was nothing left to say. Maybe she did understand, or maybe she just wanted to believe she did. Either way, it didn't matter. I stepped outside, the night air cool against my skin, and looked at the city lights stretching endlessly ahead. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing closure. I was living it. Some wounds don't heal with time. They heal when you stop reopening them. So when people ask me what happened, I tell them this. She told me to be a man and accept it. And I did. I accepted that sometimes love isn't enough, that some people don't deserve your loyalty, and that walking away can be the strongest thing you ever do. And somewhere in that acceptance, I found something better than revenge. I found peace. If you've been through something like this, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a comment below. Tell me your story, because sometimes sharing it is the first step to taking your power back.